My name is Ashley, and this is Let's Talk Dispatch.
I do. If you're gonna do it really well.
And I believe the world needs more dispatchers.
Around in the mud, blood, and
plus
beer.
years that I'm not working 4th of July. 4th of July.
Saying community policing, right? What about community dispatching?
So on this show, with the help of my guests, we will educate, empower, and support the heroes behind the headset. Hello, everybody. Welcome to another episode here at Let's Talk Dispatch with me, Ashley, the Raspy Dispatcher. I hope you all are doing well and are easing into the new year. And hopefully those folks who had to work New Year's Day or New Year's Eve didn't have too many, gunshot calls that are really fireworks calls. 2023 flew by. I honestly can't believe it's already 2024, and I'm so excited for all the things we got going on this year so far in the works. And we're going to the Denise Amberlee conference at the end of this month, January 28th. We're going to have a booth there. So if you're going to be at that conference, make sure to drop by, say hi, grab some dispatch merch. Also, we're going to be at CalMENA, our local chapter out here's conference as well. So a lot of fun stuff, a lot of conferences coming up. It's a good time of year. With all that being said, we're going to go ahead and bring on my guest today, who has over 17 years of experience as a dispatcher, 22 years in EMS, and 14 years teaching. They're a full-time dispatcher and a paid on-call EMT. And if that wasn't enough, they enjoy teaching fire-related material to dispatchers and fire personnel throughout their state. My guest today, Renee, if my mouse would work. There we go. Hi, Renee.
Hi.
How are you?
I'm doing well. How are you?
I'm doing good. You were saying you got 8 inches of snow.
So far.
So far. So still in progress out there.
Until noon tomorrow.
Oh my gosh. And so
up to a foot.
So Renee will be walking to work, maybe a light jog to keep the blood flowing.
It's gonna take me a few days to do that. My commute is 42 minutes with no hitches.
But this is what we kind of talked about it before. It's one of those realities of our job is like someone has to get there or someone ain't leaving.
Right. Exactly.
So we don't get snow days as dispatchers, it seems, unfortunately.
Sure don't. Don't in EMS either.
Well, how did you get into public safety and what was that like for you?
And it was an unfortunate incident of how I got into public safety. I worked at a gas station in a small town near my hometown. And one of our regular customers, I didn't know at the time, had a brain aneurysm when he was pumping gas at our pump. And my partner went out to check on him. She's like, "Hey, call his wife." And then she was on her way, and that's when it was like it blew. And he was having a full-blown seizure in his car. I called 911, and they were volunteer at the time, and the station was literally behind our gas station. And I was like, "What is taking so long?" Like, I had no idea, right?
Yeah.
I had no idea how any of this worked. So finally, they get there. They transport him. We move his car. Find out he had a brain aneurysm. He passed away a couple days later. And I was like, dude, I never want to feel like that again. I never, ever want to go through that feeling of not knowing what to do ever again. So that led me to a path in the town that I moved to, a volunteer fire and EMS since like 1927. And this was in the year 2000 that this started. I got to know some people around town and some of them on the fire department. And I was like, I'm interested, in all this. And they paid for my education.
Wow.
So with grants and stuff like that they continue to get, they paid for my education to become an EMT basic, an IV tech, an advanced EMT. They paid for all of it. So, and for me, it's not necessarily about, we get paid, right? And we have gotten paid since the beginning, but for me, it's more about serving my community than it was anything else. So to lead to the dispatch side, one of the EMTs on the fire department, she's like, "Hey, the county has an opening. You should apply. I think you'd be really good at it." And I was like, "Really? I'm not so sure about that." So I took the test. Out of 260 people, I was number 4 on the list.
Yeah.
And here we are. March 6th will be 18 years. So we're almost 18 years later. Here we are.
That's really amazing, and I mean, we all have these, like, life experiences that we bring with us into this line of work, and this moment you had was just so impactful that it unfortunately, they had that incident, but that pushed you to save countless lives, I would imagine, after through the work you do, through the
Yeah.
education you have, through the knowledge you have. I say all the time, like, the medical side of dispatch, like, "No, thank you. I don't wanna hear the throw up." Um, it takes special people to, to get folks to act in those type of crisis and
Yes.
being the person who's, hands-on in the field pumping too, like, that's tremendous work, and, I know, that that moment was rough, but it put you in a direction to save so many lives after that, and I think that's awesome.
Yep, it sure did.
Well, what was it like for you in the beginning? Like, how did you decide to come out of the field really and into dispatch, even though you still, dabble in the field with the EMS stuff? Um, what was kind of that deciding factor where you were like, this might be something I'm into?
Um, so I had considered private ambulance or, to attempt to get into a full-time department. Um, One of my very best friends, who was my assistant chief at the time, had told me, apply for fire, just keep going to school, keep going to school. We'll pay for it. We'll pay for it. We'll pay for it. I'm like, all right. So I was trying to get on the fire department and then my mom got cancer. So I withdrew my application and
Mm,
then I started again. And then I was like, okay, let's do this. Right. And he's like, all right, well, let's, get you started. He got me, like he found gear that fit me. We got the pack on, put the face mask on, and it was over.
oh,
I broke out into hives.
oh, wow.
That's when we discovered that I'm facial claustrophobic.
Oh, yeah.
And I could never pack up. So what is the point of being a being a fireman if I can't do it? I'm wasting everyone's time. I'm not so that I withdrew my application from fire again.
Mm,
Um, I it- the EMS was, always really more about serving my community than a career,
mm,
really for me. Um, I a lot of the people that were on our department went to work for privates and they became very jaded.
mm,
It's a very tasking career and even a volunteer, like some of the things that we see, 1% of the population does our all of our jobs here, right?
yeah.
The things that we see, the things that we hear as dispatchers are things that no person should hear, but we hear 10 calls to their one, right?
Yeah.
So it literally takes a special person to do what we do. And for me, it was the pay was nice, the benefits were good, you know, and it was just something that I was good at. I mean, like I caught on like that, so I was like, yeah, third shift sucks, but here we are. I have really great insurance, and then the insurance got bad, but I still had a really good job.
Yeah.
Hi, Kitty.
Oh, we got a guest, special guest. What's Kitty's name?
Her name is Queenie. She is the queen of
Oh.
the castle. um, so I mean, it's just that, and then the dispatch thing really like rolled into me teaching for the state
Mm,
more so than the EMS portion.
mm,
I don't get paid to teach for the state. That's
mm.
completely volunteer. I get reimbursed for mileage, meals, and lodging, but that literally is the best job I have in the
Really?
world.
So cool.
None of us get paid.
Yeah.
We all want to be there because we believe in what we're teaching.
Mm, mm, mm.
So it's all just kind of like, here we are.
But, and we need instructors like that, like, who are just passionate about the job.
Yep.
are educated in the things that they're teaching and really wanna give it to the next folks in line, you know? I think in dispatch as a whole, um, we've struggled with that, like, wanting to train our replacements, and it's such a
Mhm.
weird, phenomenon that I don't know, that I've heard that it's um, uh, so alive and well, in other lines of work as I've heard it in dispatch, you know, on a couple of these like reels that I have that have blown up, like people are just like, I tried to do dispatch, but my trainer was toxic. And, you know, I ended up in therapy because of how I was being treated. And and it's like this is a reality that folks are dealing with in
Mhm.
our centers. And it just shouldn't be happening. Like our trainers should want to train our new people. We shouldn't train Olympics. You know, we should really be empowering folks to do this tough job. And I think we're getting better, you know, but I want the day to happen where I'm not having these people sharing these such negative stories that they could have been great dispatchers, but they had a poor experience in training.
Right. I wholeheartedly agree with you. I've seen the toxic trainer and just literally shake my head. Like, we want to teach these people how to be good partners, not just good dispatchers, a partner for us, a partner for the people on the other side of the radio. That's what it's about. It's not about, I know more than you. You don't know anything. So I'm going to treat you like you don't know anything because that's literally how, some people were treated in our center. And some people got to start over with other training officers that were a little bit more patient.
Mhm.
Um, but there is a time and a place when you can start to not use it, not have that patience because they're just either just not getting it. Like maybe you need to have the conversation.
Mhm.
Is this job really for you? Right?
Mhm.
Um, that's a very humbling conversation to have with a person who has the starting passion to want to do that job.
Yeah, and I think it's totally, valid that we need to have hard conversations with folks who are having a hard time in training, and really empower them to do what they can to do better and bow out when it's not a good look, when it's not working out, right?
Yeah.
And I mean, I think dispatching is probably the hardest job to learn as someone who's lateral, not it's not for the weak, you know what I
It's
mean?
not.
Like, you know,
It's
even as a
definitely not.
full-fledged dispatcher who it's like, "I've done this job, I know how to do this job," um, it's hard to relearn this job even at a new agency. It's just a tough job, you know? Like,
Yep. I was
yeah,
at a county agency for 12 and a half years before I went to my 15 agencies, police, fire, and EMS to 1.
jeez
And I
Louise.
was like, "Does anything else happen here? Or is it?" It's a cute little town. I'm not trying to, talk trash about the town I work in because I don't live anywhere near where I work.
Yeah.
Um, but I mean, it's like it's quaint. It's a lake community. People from the Chicagoland area own second homes where I work, so
Yeah,
we have that dynamic too in the
yeah.
summertime.
Mhm.
Um, but I also got a lot of that at the previous agency because Lake Geneva is in the county that I used to work in.
Mm.
So, and that's very, they call that little Chicago.
Yeah.
So, so, we had a lot of that dynamic to deal with, but I don't. It's just. I honestly, I think the very hardest part was the geography and
Mhm.
getting rid of that post office mentality. Oh, you're in
Mhm.
Lake Geneva. Okay, let me transfer you to Lake Geneva. Like, hold up. There's like 4 communities that use the Lake Geneva area, like zip codes. Let's
Yeah.
step back here a second and ask them who they pay taxes to.
It's so true. Geography is so important. I
Mhm.
mean, like, for the folks who, like, have worked in their cities for so long and, like, know, like, the old burnt down warehouse on the corner that used to be the Jiffy Lube, but it's now the steakhouse and, like, it's cheating, really. It's not fair. You have all the secret backdoor information,
Yep.
but geography can really, like, make or break a call when your caller doesn't know where you are and you're trying to pull tits and bits from them in order to really
Right.
figure out what they're seeing. Geography is big for
And
sure.
especially after COVID, because so many of
Mhm.
these mom and pop places closed because they couldn't afford to stay open during COVID, right?
Yeah,
So
yeah.
what we knew them as before COVID, they're gone, or it's just an empty building now. So I mean, there's a lot more empty office space, a lot more empty buildings, a lot more empty industry.
Mm,
Um, my town where I work, where I live, and I'm the POC for the fire department. It's a college town
mm,
also, and like we've lost a lot of industry here because we don't have affordable housing.
mm.
So no
Yeah,
industry will come here. So that's harder too.
yeah.
So, like, what I used to know was used to be a grocery store is now a strip mall.
Mm, mhm,
So,
mhm.
like, yeah, there used to be a Blockbuster there. What's Blockbuster?
I love Blockbuster. I have
Same here.
fond memories of Blockbuster with my mom. I think we need to bring it back. I understand
Mhm.
we have 400 different streaming services, but there's nothing like browsing a wall of DVDs, looking
Exactly.
at some ridiculous covers, and not ever hearing of the movie, but still grabbing it to see what it's
Right.
about.
Exactly. Agreed. Agreed. I mean,
If
like,
you're listening and you don't
places like
know what Blockbuster is, my
look
heart
at
hurts. I feel aged. I am
Yep.
unwell.
A lot of those things, like Blockbuster, for
Mhm,
me, besides going to see the movies, is not necessarily a place that's a pleasant experience for me because we had a death there, right?
mhm.
So, but even still, the nostalgia of Blockbuster, you can still, and then, along with that 1% of the people, we are the 1%. We
Mhm.
can also literally have that conversation over a meal, and other people are like, "We're eating."
Yeah. Like, "Who invited this person to the steak dinner?"
Yep.
It's true, especially, when you're working, where you're living or in a community that you frequent
Mhm.
often. Um, I think we do have landmarks based on events we've worked, for sure.
Mhm.
And I mean, I can drive down the street and be like, "That's where blah 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 happened," and like everyone will be like, "What are you talking about?" Like, if it
Yep.
didn't make the news, I don't know about it. But like, we have access to so many incidents that go on in our cities and our counties, that folks just don't realize are happening.
Yep. Absolutely.
Mhm.
The teaching job that I do, um, we try to advocate for dispatch as much as possible because we're often overlooked. The amount of there's one portion of our conference. We also do an annual conference that I help to um, get together. We find talent, speakers, and we all create our own classes also. And then we have a general session that we all do together. And I always make sure to include us. Like, all my dispatchers, raise your hand, right?
Yeah.
Keep them up. Keep them up. And they're all looking at me like, listen, And then everybody else, I'm like, all right, all you firemen, take a look around. Take a look around all these people with their hands up. I want you to know what their job is at the end of the day. At the end of the day, their job is to literally make sure that you go home at the end of the day.
Mhm.
It's not just to say 10-4 and make the phone calls.
Yeah.
And we take it personal,
Mhm.
10,000% personal. And it changes. I've had so many people come up to me and say, I had no idea. I, I want to I want to sit in on your next class. You can do what you want here. Like nobody's telling you what you got to do. So once we get into the dispatch side of the fire stuff
Mhm.
that we're teaching for the state, and then they're like, we really need to treat our dispatchers better.
Mhm.
Yep, here's my card. If you're having a hard time getting into your dispatch center, let me know. I'll reach out to the director and we'll get you in there to sit along. take treats too, that helps.
Bring snacks, fill a gin.
Bring cream, bring snacks, bring nuts, well, maybe not the nuts, some people might be allergic, but you know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
just keep trying to plug away at the advocating for us,
Mhm.
the 1% that's overlooked in pretty much every aspect of emergency services, um, and then also the getting our job descriptions changed to get us reclassified to
Man,
being
so
first responders.
yeah.
Yeah.
And so, like, that's something that, I've noticed, like, the more I'm creating content, the more I'm expanding, like, starting to reach people who are not necessarily in the first responder world, is
Mhm.
like, that's their first response is like, dispatchers, first responders, that's a stretch. Like, that's a dead end job. That doesn't pay enough. And all
Mhm.
of these things, folks are providing feedback for. And it's just like, this is the reason that we're doing this podcast. This is the reason that I'm making these silly reels is to put this idea in reality in the forefront of people's minds is that A, dispatchers are first responders, the
Mhm.
literal first we start the process. Someone
Yep.
calls, we send them, we get folks going, officer comes up on the air, we're sending them help, so on and so forth, literally. But the problem is, and I think that people don't realize, it does go back to this fight on our job descriptions and our
Mhm.
classification. You know, we're getting paid clerk money for first responder services.
Yep.
And the reason that's happening, especially, across the states, is that our job descriptions don't justify our pay, you know?
Right.
And so it's hard to advocate for that raise or that matching wage, to our first responders that are in the field,
Yep.
because our job description doesn't match it. And when people are saying they don't that job doesn't pay enough. That's why this, that, and the third. It's like, well, we have to advocate for these changes in order to because the job isn't going away.
Right.
Someone's always gonna need to answer the phone. We just
Exactly.
need to advocate for the reclassification, the changing of our job descriptions, and that will bring the better retirement, the better mental health services, and the better paycheck that
Right.
we deserve in this line of work.
Absolutely. And it's got to be, like across the board, the small agencies, the big agencies, because when they start to audit, and they pull them out of a hat. Man, if your job description is still clerical, that's what we are all getting, not just that department. And that's where I think people fall short in the information.
Yeah.
And that's the first stepping stone is everybody has to change their job description. Every single agency, every single, you know, um, emergency answering point at the end of the really at the end of the day, even if it's, I mean, recently, our neighboring state is starting to um, consolidate a
Mm,
lot of their centers,
mm,
and but they can do that because they're all funded by the state.
mm,
Now, the state that I'm in, they're all funded independently by county or municipality, wherever you happen to work.
mm.
So we get to pick the kind of CAD that we use. We get to pick, whether or not we're going to do something where the neighboring state says, "Yeah,
Yeah.
no, we're telling you what you're going to do."
Yeah. Mhm.
And that's like a lot of people are losing their jobs, and they're going to have to go like they're on day shift somewhere. They're going to have to reapply to go to this consolidated place, so they have a better chance of getting that first response pay because of the way the state is handling it, and
Mm,
they're classifying them as first responders because they're putting them in this consolidation.
mm,
Where the smaller agencies are where the bigger struggle is for the job descriptions because some of the most dispatches law enforcement based, right?
mm, mhm, mhm.
And a lot of the police chiefs are like, no. And
Yeah.
that's where I think we need to get over that hump
Mhm, mhm.
that I've
We need
seen in my
yeah.
experience.
We need to fight for each other, you know what
Mhm.
I mean? Like, it's always funny when we talk about I don't know, in my head, when we talk about, like, increasing wages, right? If my wage increases, yours will eventually increase. Like, let's always advocate for everyone to get more money. I think sometimes, I've witnessed, like, in my partner's line of work when they're talking about positions and stuff, they're like, "Oh, like, I didn't get paid that when I did this job," and it's like, "Well, times have changed." Times have
Yeah.
changed. Let's always advocate for everyone to get more money. We're always trying to pat our pockets, like, it's
Yep.
expensive out here.
Uh,
Like, the world's wild right now, so
no, you're not kidding. And
yeah.
I mean, like, I'm by myself and I have 2 boys,
Mhm.
right? So there's also that to take into consideration.
Yeah.
And, when you finally do, so here's the other struggle, like you get so used to all that overtime, right? When
Mm.
you're short staffed, that overtime's nice.
Yeah.
And especially with inflation, man, it was really nice.
Yeah, heck yeah.
And now we have somebody trained and she's on her own and now my overtime is gone.
Oh my gosh, this is me. This is my life right now. That's why, when I got back from vacation, I went and worked a 4-hour overtime slot because there is no overtime.
Mhm.
And it was 6 AM, so, I was out here like, "I guess. This is the only one I can get," so but it's true,
Yeah.
it's like, you like when we're understaffed because you could have if you're someone who wants OT, it's there
Mhm.
for you. But if you don't want OT and you're getting forced and stuff like, that's no fun. Um,
Right.
and then when you're fully staffed, you're like, "Yay, time off," but I wanna work more so I can actually take time off, and there's no extra hours, so it's like this
Right.
double it's a good problem to have.
It is.
Problem nonetheless.
Literally a good problem to have, and, like, I was talking to a friend of mine who's also in the field. She retired very recently, and, she just looked at me and she's like, "Now that you're done working overtime, do you feel that you've got, like, a crap ton of brain fog?" And I'm like, "Yes." She's like, "Your body has just been going on no sleep and no sleep, and you're just, like, been hyper vigilant for a year because you had no time to yourself, and
Yeah.
I have all this time to myself." And I'm like, "Why did I walk into this room?" "Oh, that's right, I came to do this," and then mom brain sets in. "Oh god, I
Yeah.
gotta do laundry, and then I gotta do this, and then I gotta do dishes," and then I eventually get back to that.
One day we'll find our way for
Yes,
sure.
yes, for sure.
But I know there's people listening who is like, "What is this fully staffed that you're talking about? I've never experienced it." And it's funny because it is one of the things that, I just posted a reel today promoting the workbook that we have available for folks who are going into interviews, what questions to ask, practice questions, things like that. And one of the things that's included in the packet is 10 questions to ask your interviewer. Like, you want to know what's your force mandated overtime looks like.
Mhm.
What is your do you have a peer support team? Do you dispatch police, fire, medical, or you only do fire and medical, or you only do police? Like these questions that if you're not in the field, you might not know to ask, and you might
Yep.
not know is important to you. And I think that one of the things that I like to promote with this job is that we work 12s, in a fully staffed center where you're not getting mandated every 2 minutes. That means you get an extra day off every other week. And I
Right,
know that's not a reality for everybody everywhere, but
right.
I've been extremely lucky at both my agencies that when I've been there, we've been fully staffed, annoyingly so, quite frankly. And 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 it's awesome, right? That's great, and I've been able to enjoy that good work-life balance, but that's not the case everywhere. And
Right.
the question is, what are we doing to get more people in the door and not just fill seats, but
Yeah, yeah.
fill seats, we don't wanna do that, but we want to
Mhm,
provide people with the realities of the situations we got going on. Because if
mhm.
retention starts at the interview, we're gonna keep folks longer. You know,
Right,
if we're giving half truths, buttering up what the reality they're gonna leave. There's no reason for them to stay.
right.
They're not invested
Yep,
in it the way people who have been here are.
right.
So, that retention starts at the interview. It starts at the interview.
Agreed. Absolutely agreed.
Do you remember any of your first calls or early calls for service?
Unfortunately, there is one that I remember very well,
Oh.
and I'll probably never forget it, and it was literally one of those, um, it could have been prevented,
Hmm.
um, but I can't change it, right?
Yeah.
So, I had a girl call me, she thought her brother was having a mental health crisis, and he was in our jail.
Mm,
She thought he was in our jail. Well, he was released from our jail.
mm,
So, I put out an attempt to locate for him, check welfare, right?
mm,
Came back to our sheriff's department to get his medication that he left in the jail.
mm,
A CO saw him and saw that our rolling log and called up the dispatch like, "Hey, that's your dude for your ATL in the
mm.
lobby right now." So I call downstairs. Desk deputy picks up the phone because it's a weekend.
Yeah.
I'm like, "Hey, that's the ATL guy," and he's like, "He's fine."
Mm.
Like, very next day, the very first phone call I took, he had hung himself in the tree in the front yard when his cousin went to go pick him up for work.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, that was one of the worst. And I was like a weekend at that point.
Mm.
So that was a very tough. I had a really hard time relating with that officer for a while,
Yeah.
you know, but I mean, it's just kind of like, you know,
Mm.
almost 18 years ago,
Yeah.
let's suck it up,
Yeah.
right? We didn't deal with mental health crisis like we do now
Mhm.
back then. And
Mhm.
I'm glad that we do now. I wish we would have started sooner.
Mhm.
We might have had less burnout. We may have had um, better dispatchers in our career longer.
Mhm.
You know,
Yeah.
burnout's real for all of us,
Yeah.
and it's not just emergency services. It's literally across the board. Burnout as a parent, burnout
Mm.
wherever you work. A person can give you burnout. You
Yeah,
can give me
straight up.
burnout every day.
I'm sure I'm giving people burnout, so
Like, dude, I told you that before you got here.
But, I think that, your call, I think it kinda speaks to, um, the realities, like, of I would say, like, what we hear on the phone versus what the descriptions we're giving out to our
Mm,
officers, and,
yes,
like, it's hard, like, one thing I think the regular everyday citizen doesn't understand is you're trying to convey this thing that you're hearing, and you're trying because I hear that it's an issue. I hear that it's distress. I can hear that something's wrong, right? But
mhm,
how do I put into words to really relay to my officers, like, this is legit.
right,
Like, what I am hearing requires a certain response.
right,
And even though you can't hear it the way I'm hearing it, my language has to reflect that urgency. So they do take precaution to protect themselves going into the call. So they
right,
have, to the best of my ability, to provide them the knowledge that I can, like what they're going into. Like the difference between someone being like, "Oh, I'm just upset," versus like, "I'm upset, I'm gonna harm you." Like, you have
right,
to be able to really use the English language to convey that because they're not listening to the call. And I
right,
think that it sounds like, and I could be completely wrong, that was probably a situation that happened with this officer. He didn't talk to the sister,
right,
he didn't understand the history. He was just like, "Oh, we found him. He's here and he's alive and breathing and well in front of me. We're good."
right,
And when in reality, if he had the full context or, really dove in and took the time on that call,
mhm,
like you said, it could have been prevented. And that is probably the toughest calls to deal with, is the one where like I could have done something. If one thing were different, whether
right.
even if it was you, them, sister, him, one thing shifted, it could have changed the whole bit. And that
Yep,
is hard to sit with for sure.
yep, absolutely.
Mhm, mhm. but we're definitely in a different place with, acknowledging that the calls we take are trash, like, they are not good. We acknowledge that one of my guests, I think it was Deborah, to get a therapist day one was her
Yeah,
advice. Get a therapist day one. And
absolutely.
we just, we need tidying up. We don't need the big event. We just need, a little
Right.
unpacking every once in a while. So
Yep.
uh, definitely one of my favorite advice given. So
And and if I'm gonna shameless plug here for an organization that I
please
feel
do.
that I'm very happy came into our lives by accident.
Uh,
It's called Trauma Behind the Badge,
mm,
and my motorcycle club actually did a fundraiser for them this last summer. We raised a little bit of money for them. They provide all kinds of different services to all types of first responders,
mm,
police, fire, dispatch. They provide money for the family for a first responder to go to rehab if they need to, any type of rehab, right?
mm,
Um, they will provide, they have a free app, financial advice, um, diet advice, workout advice,
mm,
assist you to help you find a therapist if you need it. Like they are the nicest people. Chris Fields, he is a retired captain from the Oklahoma City Fire Department.
mm,
Do you remember of the Oklahoma City bombing on the
mm.
cover of Time? I think it was Time magazine of that firefighter carrying out that child.
Yeah.
That was
Oh,
him.
oh
And
wow.
yep. So I met him at a conference in Illinois.
Mm,
It so what I teach in Wisconsin is called the Mutual Aid Box Alarm System,
mm,
and it started in Illinois after the Great Chicago Fire.
mm,
And so we call Illinois Mother Mavis because they started it, and then it expanded into Wisconsin because Kenosha County butts up to Lake County, and they needed a lot of help for a while.
mm,
So when I started teaching in 2009, we had 4 counties involved in it. Now we have 4 left
mm.
to come onto the system.
Yeah.
We've done a lot of work, but we saw this man speak at the Mavis, Illinois conference where they separate the 2 because it's such a large conference, they have to separate the chiefs and the dispatchers. They
Mm.
can't put them together because it's so large.
Oh,
And so I saw this man speak and I was like in tears. He's in tears while he's talking, so he's authentic.
mm,
He's talking about, like what happened that day, and he was
mm.
fine. He was fine.
Yeah.
And then a few years later, the smell of wet concrete,
Mm,
and it was just downward spiral from there, and how he went from the bottom and came back to normal with his family. A lot of
mm,
work, right? A lot of freaking work.
yeah.
And how it's important for leadership
Mm,
to make mental health important.
mm,
It's important for the young guys, the new guys, to come in understanding you don't have to just handle it. You don't have to just deal with it.
mm.
Like you said, get a therapist day one,
Yeah.
right? Day one. They are comprised of firefighters, police officers, EMTs, paramedics, just all different kinds of military also, just across the board. And
Mm,
they are amazing people. They sent Chris Fields to Wisconsin for my motorcycle rally, along with an officer from Florida.
mm.
And they were both just amazing people just to talk to. And, they gave their spiel during our breaks when we had our bands take a break.
Yeah.
And we were just really, really very fortunate to be able to try to raise some money to try to help some first responders that might be hurting, might need the help.
Mm,
And they are definitely a good resource. Like I said, it's a free app.
mm,
Trauma Behind the Badge, and the app is called Lighthouse.
mm. Lighthouse.
It's super
Very cool. I mean,
cool.
I always love hearing that, um, A, that there's resources, right? Resources
Yeah,
are great.
yeah.
But B, that they're including dispatchers,
Mhm.
and that they're acknowledging that, um, like we're in the same fight, like we're dealing with the same stuff. It might look different,
Yep.
um, but it all goes into the same trauma bag. So it's really awesome. So thank you so much for sharing that trauma behind the badge, the app called the Lighthouse. We'll definitely include that in the show notes because the more resources, the better. You know,
Agreed. Yeah, for sure.
and what might resonate with one person, might not resonate with another. So, finding different ways to do the thing and the goal being just to help.
Yep.
We're gonna get more first responders healthy and doing this job longer, or
Yes.
even knowing when it's time to tap out. I think that's half the battle too. Um, and you do
Yeah.
that through therapy and through working it out and figuring it out and talking to someone who gets it, who's giving you
Yeah.
tools. Um, Both realities can exist at the same time. And, we got to take care of ourselves first so we can take care of others.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Awesome. So, dispatching and EMT, how do those compare? Like, I feel like they're so similar and yet so different.
They are. And I literally, when I first started dispatching, my captain, at the time, loved him. He was probably the best boss I could have had
Mm,
walking in the door.
very cool.
He literally looked at me and said, "You cannot talk medical on the phone." What? Are you kidding me right now?
Yeah,
He's like,
I've been trained. The city paid for this. I'm a professional.
and we weren't EMD certified back then,
Mm,
right?
wow.
So it was literally like, you take the call, you dispatch it, you let the people on the road deal with it. And I'm like,
Mm, yeah. Mm. That's
mm.
tough. Yeah.
It was. A lot of EMT friends that I know
Mhm,
that got into dispatching and did not continue their career in dispatching.
mhm,
I asked them, I said, "Why did you quit?"
mhm,
It's the not knowing. It's the
mhm,
not seeing.
mhm,
Being able to separate the 2 is very difficult.
mhm,
Like
mhm.
EMT EMS, we're very visual people.
Yeah.
Like, we're walking into a house, the first thing we see is your face. I
Mhm.
know if you're breathing. I know
Yeah.
if you're not, right? Hi, kitty. Um, we can tell, like, if you're bleeding or if you're not, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
In dispatch, we're relying on another person's set of eyes, and we're hoping
Yeah.
they're giving us correct answers.
Yeah. Mhm,
I
mhm.
literally gave CPR instructions to somebody who never did CPR and told me
Yeah,
she
like,
was
what are you just yesing me? Like, okay, yeah, but, like, disrespectful. Like, if you're not gonna do it, why am I doing this?
thankfully, her boyfriend lived,
Uh,
however, and he didn't need it at the time, right? Okay.
yeah.
But that's not the point,
Yeah. Yeah.
it's it's very like I had, 6 years experience going into it, right?
Mhm.
So I was okay with the unknown because sometimes we don't find out what happened with our patients. Sometimes they do pass away in the hospital a couple days later.
Yeah.
That's sometimes I feel like seeing the death is worse than not knowing,
Mhm. Mhm.
especially with the kiddos.
Mhm.
Um, but as far as like how dispatch relates, because they didn't have a good relationship with dispatch when I first became an EMT. I mean, we were respectful to each other, right?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah,
And, we didn't, like we were professional on the radio and whatever. But then of course when we get to the call, like they said that they're like they broke their foot and there's literally a stub toe, right? Okay.
every time, every time. There's blood
And
everywhere, and there's, like,
yeah,
no blood. It's nail polish, like,
right,
it's the
right.
worst.
So we could and now, like I understand, like, I've literally stood up in meetings. I'm like, you all need to understand that they're literally just giving you the information that they're getting from somebody else. They
Facts.
don't have eyes on this. So you can't, you have to stop blaming them.
Yeah. Mhm.
And then once we get into after action, um, audits and stuff, and we start listening. And my leadership on the fire department that I'm on has come around a whole lot since they've become full time. We became a combination full time and paid on call department.
Mm,
So one of my assistant chiefs came. He just got promoted to full time here at my department. He was on another full time department
mm,
elsewhere for many years, but he's a very good advocate in working together. And like he's like, I need to bring this up. I need you guys to listen to this because you don't understand what else happening behind the scenes. And I think this will give you a better perspective of how often you're asking, what's the ETA of the helicopter?
mm, mhm,
And then like literally, what's the ETA of the helicopter? And he paused it. He's like, y'all asked 15 seconds ago. Right. And she's still dealing with trying to get a paramedic coming too. Right.
yeah,
She's still on the phone with somebody else. So, and they're one person in that room. They have no partners.
mm,
So that I think has come a long way. And I think, at least for me, in my experience, right?
mhm,
Because I've also trying to advocate where I have worked. Hey,
yeah,
come you sit along in dispatch. When I was EMS lieutenant, I made my new people go sit in dispatch for
that's
4 hours
right,
on a Saturday afternoon, not a Monday morning.
yeah.
Saturday afternoon, Saturday night, we're doing it in the evening, people. We're not doing it when there's nothing happening. And the hardest decision you have to make is what's for lunch, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Mhm,
Like
mhm.
dispatch supervisor wasn't exactly happy with me about it. And I was like, listen, this is part of me advocating for our job here, right?
Mhm,
And she's like,
mhm.
okay, fine. She finally,
Okay. But it's so true. It's just, you don't know until you know, and it's just so important. It's important for dispatch to go on ride-alongs. It's
yep,
important for patrol to sit in, dispatch. I mean, there's just a world of understanding that comes from that experience. I mean, it's one of the reasons why we say folks who are considering this line of work, if you're not doing sit-alongs in your hiring process, what are you doing?
right,
Like what if you don't give someone the opportunity to come into your center, get a feel for it, see the work that's being done, and then decide if they want to continue in this process, there's a good chance you're going to be wasting each other's time,
right,
the department's money. Like let's be fully transparent with this job so we get people who understand what they're doing,
yep,
experienced a little bit of it, see it and go, "I could do that," and then see if they can. I all
yep.
for transparency in this process.
And if you have an agency that's not willing to do that, I would think twice.
That's right. If they're like, you don't need to get along, not all dispatch centers are cut from the same cloth, and that's just
Hmm.
the reality. And you as the new person, you're not gonna fix that. You're
Nope.
just gonna try to survive that training, that process, and you wanna go place where it feels good to be. So ask the right questions. You're the
Yep.
prize. You
Yep.
are the prize.
Exactly. Exactly. And you walk in there like you're the prize, and man, own it.
Exactly. That's
Absolutely, own
right.
it.
And it's funny because, I'm come from a world of sports, I played a little basketball in college, and I talk to my partner about like the the need for dispatchers, right? And the process of applying to be a first responder has shifted so much. I mean,
Hmm.
we've gone from like where there's over 100, 200, 300 applicants, and you're
Yep.
hoping to be top 5. You're
Right.
hoping that you're on the top of the testing, you're in this and that. But now it's like we have hundreds of departments, you know, and very few applicants. So it
Yep.
becomes in my head, it becomes a recruiting game almost, right? Like departments are recruiting officers. They're recruiting dispatchers.
Yep.
Come here because we're gonna give you, you know, the fancy gear and the bonus pay. And so it's like a recruitment. It's a college recruitment in my head.
Yep.
Like the way I was recruited for basketball. They're like, "This is our fancy gym." Well, this is our fancy gym.
Right.
We'll give you this much. And honestly, honestly, that's the reality we're living in, but I think some departments are still acting like the recruit is trying to get to them, like, "No, we're trying to get to the recruit." Where it's
Right,
right now, we're in a world where we're trying to convince them, and if we're trying to convince them, that means 6 other people are trying to convince them. So
right,
what are we doing for our applicants to make them feel like we're D1 and we want
right,
to come play at our D1 school? What are we
right.
doing, you know? And I
You
think
know,
that's the answer to fixing our problems in these departments is like, we need to be treating people like they're the D1 athlete and we're trying to get them to come to our squad, you know?
yeah. I met a woman who was in HR over the summer,
Mhm,
and she's HR for industrial.
mhm.
Okay. I don't know exactly what it is that they do, but all I know is that it's
Sounds
industrial.
complicated.
Right. So she's like, I went to a conference and they were talking about what it's like to hire a person for one opening.
Mm,
You're going to look at 43 applications. You're going to interview 38 of those people,
Jeez Louise,
and
yeah.
only 2 are going to respond after you interview them.
Mhm,
And they
mhm.
had over 100 openings.
Jeez Louise,
So
yeah.
with over 2,000 applications that she was gonna see, it
Mm,
was just under 2,000 that they were going to interview,
jeez,
right? So I'm like, "Oh my god."
Mhm.
Like, a small agency, right? So
Yeah,
we went understaffed for almost a year,
mhm,
almost a year,
mhm,
11 months. We went,
yeah,
understaffed by a full-timer for 11 months.
mhm,
And, like, I was seeing some of these applications that were getting dropped off, and it was clearly applied to keep, um, unemployment.
yeah,
They knew they
mhm,
weren't gonna get the job.
yeah,
They knew that they wouldn't qualify because they were a felon.
mhm, mhm. Yeah, yeah, you can't apply for this line of work with the felony. Maybe a little old misdemeanor, but not a felony.
Right. So, I mean, and I understand that, people make mistakes
Mhm,
and
mhm,
stuff happens, right?
yeah, yeah.
But when you literally like, "Why do you want this job?" "'Cause the pay would be bomb." I mean, they're not wrong,
I don't know, Renee. I think that person should they should get a shot.
right? I don't know, I guess I'm in awe of, like, these agencies are like, "Oh, we have state retirement."
Yeah, yeah,
What they fail to tell you is that the insurance costs you $150 a month for a family, and you have a $6,000 deductible.
yeah, yeah.
Like, that's
Mhm.
great. You're getting paid 25 bucks an hour, but you're also spending that money in your insurance also.
Yeah,
And the reason I have a 42-minute commute is because my insurance is amazing.
yeah. And all of that matters. All of that are the questions we should be asking, in the interview, and you should be looking through the benefits that are listed in these job announcements. And I know that for folks who are just getting into the big person profession adult jobs, they look at the salary and they're like, yeah, that's it. But the
Yeah.
benefits are just, if not more important. Um, the other thing that I'm really advocating for in our interview processes are providing folks the interview questions you want them to answer. It's something
Mhm,
that they do in the corporate world. It's inclusive. You give them the answers the day before,
mhm.
the questions, not the answers. I gotta come up with their own answers. Yeah, but you give them the questions the day before. They can read it. They can ponder on
Right.
their life experience and actually come up with a full-fledged answer rather than me just shooting off the side of my hip and hoping I
Yeah.
can think of something and make it land. And, because I think the questions are for the employer, of course, but they're also for me as a potential applicant. If I'm reading
Mhm.
these questions and I'm like, this sounds like nothing I want to do. I don't
Right.
want to I don't want to have to answer questions like this.
Right.
Probably not going to be the right person for the job. You
Right.
know, I don't know why we make it harder for people to be successful in our already like if they're going to flounder out, they're going to flounder out in training. You know,
Right.
like our system is set up to weed people out on its own. But you
Mhm.
know, let's get good people. Let's get people who can formulate good answers, who show up well when given the opportunity, and let's give them a chance. You know,
Yep.
let's see what they can do.
Absolutely.
Oh my gosh, Renee, we have been killing it. We It's been such a wonderful interview. Um, and thank you for, sharing your experience, being willing to, share some tough stories. Um, we have to bring those things to light to give other people um a glimpse into the stuff we got going on
Yeah.
this side of the microphone. So I really do appreciate you being vulnerable. Um, and the last question that I ask everyone, as we come to a close, is what advice would you give someone considering a career in dispatch?
Go bartend and waitress. If you are a good bartender or if you can be a good wait person, you will rock this job. Every single person that I have trained that has had previous bartending and previous wait staff experience rocked this job. If you can do that, man, you can do this. 10,000%
Oh
every
my
single
god.
time.
That is hilarious. I thought you were just gonna be like, "So you can make us a martini because we need a little alcohol on this shift. We need good people to make good drinks."
Mm,
After work.
I wasn't gonna go there, but since you did.
That is fun. It's true though. Actually, one of the jobs that I say I could never do is like waitressing and
Mhm.
bartending, and like those you folks out there who are in that line of work or who have done it in the past, man, props to you because the way people are disrespectful on the phone as a 911 dispatcher, I know people are disrespectful in person in food
Yep,
service. So props to you. And Renee, you're right. If you can deal with customer service in those industries,
yep,
you can answer 911 and deal with folks on their worst day.
absolutely.
Sure.
Yep. I literally had, um where was I? I was out with friends, and you know how often that happens? Not very often, right? Okay, and we were at a bar, it was busy, like, super, super busy, and this girl was just keeping up with everybody, she
Mm,
was doing her thing, she did have a disrespectful dude, and we all backed her up, right?
yeah. Yeah.
And then, but she's like, "I got this," right? And she dealt with it, and then when she got all done, I looked at her, I said, "Girl, have you ever considered becoming a police dispatcher?" And she looked at me, she's like, "What?" I'm like, "I'm serious. I'm
Yeah.
dead serious." 'Cause, like, I bartended and waitressed when I was younger too, like,
Mhm.
for real. Consider it.
Yeah.
Consider it. Just go do a sit along, think about it. You'd be really good at it. And she's like, "Why?" And then you're like, "Oh, I gotta go do this." And then she came back and like little tidbit conversations here and there. But
Yeah.
like she reached out to me. She's working at a center in Southern Illinois.
Look at that. We're
Yep.
recruiting at bars too. Everybody get in this line of work. I love it. That's
Yep.
so awesome. And it's so, so true. Look at that. How to drink changed a life. I love it. That's
Yep.
amazing.
Yep.
Very cool.
Yep.
Oh my gosh. Again,
Well,
Renee, go ahead.
thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
Oh my gosh, Renee, thank you so much again for being willing to jump on with me, sharing your story, sharing your drink recipes. And I really appreciate it. I really do.
Well, I appreciate you having me, and I appreciate my shameless plug and all the resources that I can throw out there. I'm gonna do it no matter what, so we can all get the help that we need if we need it, the
Yes,
pushes we need, everything that we need because, like you said, we all need to support each other. And if we don't, what good are we?
exactly.
Yeah,
Well, Renee, I'll be right back with you again. Thank you so much.
absolutely. Thanks.
All right, everybody. That was another amazing episode here on Let's Talk Dispatch. Renee, yes, thank you so much for coming on, sharing your story. sharing your resources. Trauma Behind the Badge, I believe the app was called the Lighthouse. We'll include that information in the video notes as well, because we need more dispatchers and we need folks to be doing well who are doing this job currently. So if you do need a little extra help, if you're feeling a little, like you're needing a tune up, there's no problem in finding help. And it sounds like Renee's experience with Trauma Behind the Badge has been a good one. So maybe it'll be a good fit for you. Until next time, everybody, stay raspy. Of course, like, subscribe, tell a friend, and check us out at theraspydispatcher.com. Thank you for listening to Let's Talk Dispatch podcast. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button. You can find us wherever you listen to podcasts, including Apple Podcasts and Spotify. If you're interested in becoming a guest on the show, or maybe even submitting your own story, you can do all that and more at theraspydispatcher.com. Until next time, stay raspy.